Hey there, AP World History students, Mr. Booren and Mrs. Dumas here to talk to you about skill number 3 for AP World History.
Super important.
Taking good notes. Now, we cannot overstate the importance of taking really good notes for this class.
No, it's like the backbone of what you're going to do. You got all these skills, all these things, but you got to get that knowledge.
Yeah,
right?
How many thousands of years of history are we going to cover?
Most of it.
I know. I love it, though. It's totally fine. So we're going to talk to you about how to avoid the biggest pitfalls when it comes to note-taking. And usually what we see with students is either they take way, way, way too many notes, or not enough.
Yes.
And step number 1 in avoiding that pitfall is to know what you're taking notes on. And that's really what we're going to hit on today.
Yes.
So as always, everything we do is going to be based on the AP themes and AP learning objectives that can be found in the CED, that holy grail of AP World History.
I'm tired of talking about this boring stuff. Let's get into the content. That's the headliner, dude. Today we're talking about Chernobyl.
Yes.
Now, you know we love this topic.
Oh my God, I love it so much.
All right. Now, we're going to pretend that we are AP World History students getting ready to take notes at home. We're going to put ourselves in your shoes.
What kind of shoes, Doc Martens?
That's stinky shoes. It's like old, stinky sneakers. I'm wearing my old Sambas today.
That's so nasty.
I know. Hey, just got to be real with it. Now, one thing to note here, guys, we will always give you learning objectives whenever we give you anything. All right. So when you take notes, you're going to track back to these objectives. That way you can avoid pitfall number 1 since you know what we're taking notes on. So with that said, let's go over and cruise over to a note catcher that we have devised here for you to help you take better notes. Okay. Now, what you see here in front of you is a note catcher we will be using for note taking. At the top, you can see the themes we will be focusing on. And remember that we will always want to connect any notes that we take back to the themes. Below the themes, you can see a T-chart that has the learning objectives on the left-hand side and a space to take notes on the right-hand side. I cannot recommend enough taking notes using this format, at least to start with. Right? Because it's going to keep all of your notes organized. You're going to be tracking back to your objectives. Everything will be in its nice, neat little packet form, and that'll keep you on track. And your future self will thank you when you go back and start looking at notes later on. And let's say March and April.
Is something coming up?
I think there's a big test at the end of this class.
Oh, I think there is too. Okay.
All right. So, Jen, what are we going to do?
Okay. So if I'm a student, the first thing I'm going to want to do is read over the themes and the learning objectives. I want to have some idea as to what I'm looking for before either watching a video or completing a reading. I don't want to just start watching a video and start the reading with no idea as to what I'm looking for. So read over the themes and read over the learning objectives. It's super important. So today we're pretending we've been assigned a video on Chernobyl. Fantastic.
So
what an
fun.
awesome teacher who would assign a video on Chernobyl, right?
At the beginning of the year.
And so while we're watching it, once I've read over the learning objectives and the themes, I know what I'm taking notes on. So I know before I start this video that I need to be looking for information about the development of technologies and how it changed the world. And I also need to be looking for information on the causes and effects of environmental changes. So right away, that's what I'm going to focus on. So when I'm watching the video, listening to what's being said, I need to keep those in the back of my mind.
All right, dude. So with that goal in mind, tracking back to our topics and our themes, let's go ahead and start this video.
Yeah.
On April 26, 1986, the Soviet Union's Chernobyl power complex nuclear reactor 4 exploded. The explosion was caused by major fundamental flaws in the reactor design on top of a total disregard for protocol by some of the higher-ranking people in charge, despite some serious reservations from more junior members of the staff. But before we get into all of that, let's start at the beginning, with nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is created by splitting apart certain types of large isotopes, called fissile isotopes. Isotopes are variations of an element that have different numbers of neutrons, and some are more stable than others. A fissile isotope breaks apart when a neutron hits it, and even once in a while on its own. When it breaks apart, that's called nuclear fission, and it's the isotope's way of trying to become more stable. When it does, kinetic energy that's converted to heat is released, and that energy is ultimately what powers an electrical grid. So, why would we use nuclear energy and not just fossil fuels? Well, the energy released from one fission reaction is around 1 million times greater than the energy released when one fossil fuel molecule is burnt. Now back to Chernobyl. There were many reasons Chernobyl exploded. To understand them, let's first take a look at how the reactor worked and was controlled. The Chernobyl RBMK-1000 reactor is a model specific to the former Soviet Union. It has never been used anywhere else. Nuclear power is considered safe, as long as protocols are followed, proper materials are used, and the reactor is designed to keep itself at a stable power level. All reactors in operation today have this design feature, but the reactors at Chernobyl didn't. Like all modern reactors, Chernobyl used uranium dioxide fuel enriched with uranium-235, an isotope of uranium that's really prone to undergo fission. When uranium-235 is hit by a neutron, it splits into 2 other atoms, plus 2 to 3 other neutrons. One of the atoms sometimes produced by uranium-235's fission is xenon-135, which played an important role in the accident, so I'll get back to that shortly. Those 2 to 3 neutrons released are important because some go on to hit other atoms of uranium-235, continuing the chain reaction and continuing to create energy in the reactor. The RBMK-1000 reactor used large graphite blocks to moderate the speed of the neutrons, slowing them down by reducing their energy. Although it may sound counterintuitive, fast-moving neutrons are less likely to hit and break apart uranium-235. They simply whiz by too fast. By slowing them down, it increased the chance that each neutron would hit uranium-235 and cause it to undergo fission, keeping the reaction going and releasing energy needed to heat water in the reactor. And that water is essential. The whole point of uranium-235 fission is to create enough energy to boil water in the reactor into steam. That steam is what spins the turbines that drive the electricity generators to power the electrical grid. Okay, so...
Now I'm going to stop it right there. I'm not going to try to watch this whole 9-minute video in one go and then try to go back at the end and take notes. That's like a fool's errand. I'm stopping here specifically because as I think back to the overall topic, theme, and objective that I have for my note taking, I've gotten a lot of good information on these technological developments that were changing the 20th century, and I know why these developments are occurring. So I've got some really good information here that I can use to help meeting my purpose of explaining my objective. I can develop my theme, and I can think about the overall historical skill that we identified in the last video, which was historical causation.
So would your key technology, would it be the use of nuclear energy?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So we're going to say that in nuclear, wow, you might need to type here. Nuclear reactors were developed because they are, I think they said 1 million, right?
Yeah, 1 million times more.
1 million times more efficient.
Yeah. Or basically they produced, for every, say, 1 watt of energy that a fossil fuel could produce, a nuclear reactor could produce 1 million watts.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty good. In our energy consuming world, which we definitely became part of in the 20th century.
Right?
Yeah.
This means more energy into the grid.
Yeah.
All right, so there's my overall note. Now, is that everything? Is it that super detailed, all that small sort of stuff? No, I don't need to quote the video chapter and verse here at this point in time. I just want to get down those main pieces of information that are going to explain how developments in this new technology would have some sort of impact or change in the 20th century.
So you didn't feel the need to talk down exactly how it worked, with uranium and splitting of the atoms and fission?
I'm with you. I think we do need that, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think that's pretty important because let's talk about what the nuclear reactor is. So, what you just said, Jen, is important. We need some details in our notes. We can't just glance over everything. Like you said at the top, we don't want to be too specific, but we also don't want to be too broad. If we leave things here, we're way too broad.
Okay.
If we write down everything she said, we're way too specific. So what we have to do is find that happy medium, right? So uranium isotopes are split, right? This is our reaction. Is that fusion or fission?
That's fission.
Fission reaction. Clearly not science teachers. You could be a science teacher or just good at watching videos.
I'm very good at it.
Our fission reaction, which produces energy in the form of heat, which creates steam when water is introduced
And I think that would be like enough. This is not a physics lesson. This is not, chemical reaction lesson. You just know that it's the isotopes that split, that create the heat, that creates the steam, that eventually turns into energy. That's it. That's a new technology. You've explained how it works. We're good.
Boom. So going back again, explain how the development of new technologies can change the world from 1900 to the present. We've got this new form of nuclear energy, this new form of power. This is going to create electricity. So our last step here would rewrite electricity was distributed to towns, which powered homes, businesses, etc.
Yeah, just it produced a lot more energy, which means a lot more people are going to get it.
That's right. All right, cool. So I think at this point in time, we can move on to our video again and start recording some more information.
All right.
So now we have a good idea of how we can keep a reactor generating energy. But what about if we want to slow it down or even stop it? The general way to slow down a reactor is to have fewer neutrons hitting and splitting apart uranium-235. And the way to do that is by having neutron absorbers. So, in addition to being used to create steam, water was also used in the reactor to act as a neutron absorber. Every element absorbs neutrons to some degree, even the hydrogens and oxygens in water. While each individual hydrogen and oxygen atom aren't that likely to absorb neutrons, there is so much water in a reactor that combined, the water acts as a good absorber. If that water were to disappear, it would throw the neutron balance out of whack. Another absorber is xenon-135. The uranium-235 fission product I mentioned earlier. Xenon-135 is a very good absorber, one of the best of all the isotopes in the universe. Just a tiny bit can completely stop a nuclear chain reaction. And finally, boron carbide control rods. Boron carbide absorbs neutrons extremely well, slowing down the nuclear chain reaction. The RBM K1000 reactor had over 200 of them, and they were moved in and out to decrease and increase the rate of fission. So all of these things work together to keep fission going while still controlling it. Let's very briefly turn to physics to explain why Chernobyl's reactor was so different from the ones in operation today. Today's nuclear reactors are designed to have a negative void coefficient, which might sound very complicated, but here's the basic premise. It's a negative feedback loop. If the water in a reactor starts to run low, the reactor power drops so that it doesn't get out of control. That was not the case with Chernobyl. To cut costs, the RBMK reactors were the only commercial reactors in the world designed with a positive void coefficient, which is a positive feedback loop.
I don't know about you, Jen, but I think that's important as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to understand, at least in terms of the technology, and maybe this goes under the causes, that the reactors used in Chernobyl were not like the modern reactors today. And I believe the speaker says it's because they did it because it was cheaper, right? So they're creating less, I don't know how to say it, probably less safe reactors because in the long run it was cheaper and they wanted to get them up as much as possible. So my question then is, does that belong? We don't know if that belongs yet in the causes or the technology. So let's just keep it in the technology section for right now.
Right. I think so too. And what I'm going to do here in my notes is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to highlight this. This is something I might need to come back to. Maybe I need to go out to the broader internet if the video doesn't answer this question. Right. Or if I don't have enough information, I might need to do some extended research to find an answer to this question. But I'm going to highlight this information because I know it's important. I'm not quite sure I know why the reactor was designed to be made cheaply but not safely. Yeah. I don't have enough historical context at this point in time to answer this question. But I can recognize that it's important, and I'm going to infer based on my other theme that there's going to be some sort of connection there. Now, for the purposes of brevity, I don't think we need to watch this entire video. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip us ahead to the end so that we can take a look at what happened after the explosion occurred. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to jump us forward. So if you want to watch this entire video, feel free to go out to the internet and find it, but we're going to jump ahead because we don't need to watch the entire thing.
As it did, atmospheric oxygen rushed in and reacted with the hot graphite blocks. Graphite was now the...
Oh my
job is to make college easy.
Hey, do you kids want to go to college?
If this is another
fuel and a combustion reaction, causing a second fiery explosion. The damage of the immediate explosion was minor compared to what was to come. The world became aware of the events at Chernobyl when radiation was first noticed outside a reactor in Sweden. Much of Eastern Europe was being exposed to the radioactive cloud. The night of the explosion, only 2 plant workers died, but over 200 people, many of whom were firefighters who eventually put out the fire, came down with acute radiation syndrome. Within 2 weeks, 28 of them were dead. Chernobyl serves as a reminder of what can happen when a safety culture becomes unhinged. In the words of the late Dr. Valery Legasov, a Soviet inorganic chemist and chief of the commission investigating the Chernobyl disaster, I advocate the respect for human engineering and sound man-machine interaction. This is a lesson that Chernobyl taught us. The ruins of the Chernobyl reactor now sit under a metal shell, but some of the radioactive isotopes under that shell and in the surrounding areas have a half-life in the tens of thousands of years, which means they'll exist long after we and dozens of generations after us are gone.
Okay, so if we were to go back and look at our learning objectives, one of them is to explain the causes and effects of environmental changes in the period from 1900 to the present. Okay, so we saw on that video, not PowerPoint. We saw in the video that when they had that second explosion, the radiation cloud expanded not only in the Soviet Union and the Ukraine, but it hit parts of Europe, like Sweden. And I know, just based from other knowledge, that it also was recognized in Germany as well. So right there, we have the information that the environmental impact is that you have this huge radiation cloud that is spreading, and radiation is not good. Not only it could get into the plant supply, the water supply, it obviously gets into people. And so that was the environmental effect. What was the cause? Well, the freaking power plant exploded.
That's right.
Like a huge explosion. And once oxygen got in with that explosion, it made a little whoosh into a whoosh.
That's right. It got out of control. It got way out of control.
Right. And if we were to continue to watch this video a little bit more and actually go back a little bit more, it does talk about how the radiation does seep into the ground near the power plant and actually creates an exclusion zone. Like people couldn't go in it at all because it was so radioactive. And even today, even though you can get tours into Chernobyl, which we so need to do.
No, that would be awesome. So insane to get to go.
There is still measurable radiation. You still can't stay there for a long period of time. The plants are still affected. The animals have been affected. And so you get that information in this video, and then you would write it down, as Mr. Breen's doing right now.
So we got 28 people are dead. The radiation in the area has a half-life.
Thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
And we know because of that, it's going to poison the water supply. It's going to poison the plant life, the trees.
Right. It's any and all things. It's like you said, it's an exclusion zone. We can't live there. Right. So 9-minute video, we were able to walk away with, what do we have here? 6 bullet pointed notes that we could use to help meet our objectives. And if we need more information, again, we could always go out into the broader internet and we could go with the effects of the Chernobyl disaster, right? On the environment, and we could utilize some real quick information. Let's try to find reliable sources.
Yes,
use our
please do not
digital literacy skills. Yeah.
We're not using Billy Bob's theory on Chernobyl. Go to a reputable site.
That's right. Which is not Instagram. Nothing from social media
or
accounts here.
Wikipedia, for God's sakes.
Absolutely not. Now, Jen, how long should students spend if they go this route?
No more than 15 minutes. We're usually when we provide videos or readings, it's going to contain enough information to get everything you need to be able to address learning objectives. But if you don't feel it is, definitely you can go out on your own, but no more than 15 minutes. We don't want you spending an hour researching this. You're not writing a book on it.
Right. And if you find some information that's helpful, just like we were doing with the movie, let's paraphrase that information, put it into our own words, put it into our notes, and then we're done. All right. And then
but we're not done.
Or we're not done taking notes?
Well, I think we're done taking notes. We're not done applying the notes.
We have to do something with this knowledge?
Yeah, you got to tie them back to the theme, dude.
I guess we're going to have to watch the next video then.
Yes, indeed, you will.
All right, guys. So again, taking notes, huge foundational core backbone to this class. You're going to have to make sure that you develop this skill, and you're going to have to make sure that you have reliable notes, which means when we do note-taking Q&A sessions, when we do any of the classroom discussions, any of that sort of stuff, please make sure that you show up with notes because we don't have enough time or energy to hit all these things in class.
There's no way. So, well, we hope this video helped explain how to take notes for AP World History. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or complaints, because we get those too, don't hesitate to contact either Mr. Breen or Mrs. Dumas. And until next time, adios, cheerio, ciao, bye for now.
Bye.